I was just joking with some colleagues in the back of the room and said, well, that must be because everyone in Building 1 already knows everything they need to know about this project and is ready to cast their vote. But I do thank you for coming. And the format for the evening, first of all, just in case there's an emergency, both of these rooms are doors or emergency exits, as is the door that you came in through. The restroom is right over here. Just go out and do a 180 there. The format for this is a PowerPoint presentation that I, as director of the library, and Tim Wiles, and Paul Mays, our architect, will run through, and we'll run through, kind of relatively quickly. Actually, I don't know how you feel. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but with such a small group, we could probably take questions as we go rather than waiting until the end. Or do you have a preference?
Sure, no, we can do that.
Okay, so if there are any questions as we go along, feel free to ask them. But the way we had set it up was that we would run through the PowerPoint for about half an hour and then entertain questions for about half an hour. So that's the basic structure. I'm going to say with 4 people in attendance that are not part of the staff, that if you have a question, just fire away with it at any time. So now, how do we get to the next? There you go. Thank you. Oh, you're going to do your intro. Sorry.
Is my mic on? Can you hear me?
It's not working.
Okay. I'll shout that. Can we turn this up? No?
Did you run out of battery?
I don't know. I'll speak very loudly.
You could use that other handheld. Did you have the handheld too?
Wait, no?
Here it is.
No.
Is this working?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So thank you, Tim. Yes, I'm Paul Mays. I'm a library architect. And I just wanted to add to Tim's introduction the fact that today is actually the culmination of a series of meetings we've been having for a little over a year, asking for input, soliciting the community's take on what the library should be. That includes the spaces as well as the services provided by the library. And in fact, what you're going to see this evening is a reflection of how we propose to solve a lot of the issues that have been discussed and a lot of the hopes that people have for the future of the Gilderman Public Library. So having said that, we've identified...
I'm just going to add, though, that those meetings and their associated online surveys had a combined participation of 2,108 people. So it makes me feel less bad about the fact that we've got a light turnout tonight.
That is true. And we do have another presentation coming up in May.
May 2nd, yes.
So hopefully more people will be interested in what we want to talk about. But what I thought I'd do is begin with a little summary of some of the things we've identified as priorities based on what the community has told us. We always find that's a more successful way of approaching library design is to address the things that the community really wants so that we're creating the right library. Libraries in different communities are very different. And so you can see we've identified some of those large topics, the sort of priorities in this corner. And Tim, I don't know if you want to start talking about some of these.
So in those 2,100 survey responses, safety and accessibility was mentioned by most people at 24% of the total. A cafe/used bookstore was mentioned by 23%, and that is in the plan, and we are calling that cafe Starbucks for the time being until we get sued by Starbucks. You can see the 14% for traditional and non-traditional programs. So the traditional program, in essence, is what libraries have always done, loaning books and now loaning other kinds of things. And the non-traditional program is really getting crazy with what you loan, such as this library, which loans Wi-Fi hotspots and folding tables, but also non-traditional includes programming. So over the last generation, people come to libraries as much for events as they do to check out material, speakers, concerts, movies, that sort of thing. About 10% of the people envisioned a more robust and imaginative space for children, and about 10% of the people envisioned lots of kind of cozy little nooks, bay windows, things like that, where you could settle in and read or work on a laptop here at the library. And there were a number of other priorities as well, but these were the ones mentioned by the most people. Many of the other priorities also got worked into the plan. And I think in general, we found a wide dispersion or a wide spread of people interested in different subjects that we had asked them about.
That's true, and in fact, that's to be expected. The demographics of library users can spread over a broad range of age groups and backgrounds, and so you would imagine that the interests would also have a fairly diverse field. I'll just add a couple of things, and that is that when you try to quantify things with statistics and numbers, of course, it doesn't always come out in the wash. So when we say 10% or 200 and some people brought up a robust and imaginative children's room, that doesn't mean that's all they were interested in. So things like the programs, a story hour would be a traditional children's program, for example. These people are also reflected in some of these other numbers. So you sort of have to balance across what the responses were. This is a look at some pie charts that just describe some of the other responses we received. And you can see several key things, including the fact that the traditional collection is still very important. The book remains the library's brand all these years later. We were told that movies would destroy books, and then television would destroy books, and then the internet would destroy books. And yet here we still have books, right? But you can see, again, some of the priorities we identified in the last slide relative to those areas of interest that aren't being met by the library at full capacity at the moment, meaning we don't have full safety and accessibility in some people's minds in terms of what they see in their library. So there were many other types of spaces that were talked about, and in fact, as Tim said, we've added them into the ideas for the building, including technology access or the character of the finishes and warmth of the building and so forth. This is a plan of the existing building just to orient everybody and have you focus on how this lays out. But we start from the entryway, and Tim, maybe you can walk us through some of the thoughts about the existing library.
Absolutely.
What's
so
good and bad.
obviously a photo of our entryway, and then this is the entryway itself. This is the room we are seated in right now, and this, I believe, is a photo of that room. A lot of staff areas back here. The main adult collection is in this area. One thing that a lot of people miss, and they miss it in part because we do a lot of programs in this room, but right behind this screen there's a giant window, and there's a nexus or an axis all the way over to the giant window in the periodicals area.
So when you're leaving today, look out that window, out that door, you'll see all the way through to the other end of the building.
And when the screen is up, what that architect meant is for you to kind of see from one end to the other. I'm not an architect, but that parallels Western Avenue.
Yes.
Interesting idea. So the adult collection is here, the periodicals room is here, the children's area is here. We're going to pay special attention throughout this presentation to the children's program room. We're going to come back to this idea. Its fire capacity is 40, and this is what was planned in 1992 when this building was built a generation ago. All other thoughts on this slide?
When we say 1992 as well, many people, their first reaction is, well, it's still a relatively new building. But when you consider that 1992 is over a quarter century ago, put that into your head when you're trying to arrange those ideas about what library services have done in that time and just what the condition of buildings without major projects may do. One of the things that we want to make sure that we're paying attention to are some of the architectural components in the original building. So the spine, for example, with the skylight that runs down that axis that Tim was talking about is actually a very nice feature. It brings natural light into the space, and these are things we want to focus on. This room in particular has nearly perfect acoustics. That's something we don't want to mess with. It was almost a happy accident, but it is in very many ways a perfect place for recitals and music and even spoken word. But then some things we know we can address are the crowded areas, the children's spaces, the seating has been an area of concern, and the amount of meeting space that is necessary. So many times the rooms are overbooked, or we can't do programs, or because, for example, the children's program room is so small, they have to do it in this meeting room, and if it's in this meeting room, that takes away the opportunity to hold certain adult programs or other functions. So we really want to think about how the library is used and how it will be used going forward.
I'll jump in here. So we thought it would be useful to compare what Guilderland was like and what the library was like in 1992 when it opened. So the population has changed during that time period by plus about 20%. Of course, there's another census coming out next year. We won't know the full population. A quick side comment here, there are, you see different numbers in the paper, anywhere from 16 to 26 different housing complexes in one form of planning or another in the town of Guilderland. So either the town is growing or people that currently live in one place in Guilderland are all going to go move into 16 different new complexes. So I suspect that the town is actually growing beyond the 20% that we've already been able to record. This number comes from the 2010 census, but it's the most recent number we have available to us. Registered borrowers, since we were open, has gone up by about 3,000, so about 25%. Items checked out has gone up 286% since 1992. Something to mention here is that a lot of people will say, why do we need libraries at all in the age of Google and the internet? There are a lot of answers to that question, but one of the answers is people tell us that they need libraries by coming here and by checking things out. Patrons served, which if I could redo this, I would say visits to the library. So the number of people who came through the front door in 1992 was 76,000, and last year about 218,000. In a building essentially built for 76,000 people to come through the door in a year. And this one is astonishing. From 1992 to the present, they answered 6,300 reference questions in 1992 at the reference desk and 38,000 last year for an almost 500% increase. I'm going to skip the program numbers because we come back to them later. I'm just going to say briefly, we held 775 programs last year, attended by 24,000 people, and we have, a small increase in the number of hours per week that we've been open from 1992 to 2018.
As a library architect, one of the things we look at are statistics that relate to circulation or the community demographics. But this shows a healthy library. This shows that as the community grew by 20%, the number of library card holding members of the community actually outpaced the growth of the general community. And we see that it's a vital and dynamic space because it continues to excel in the delivery of materials and collection, as well as other components, meaning people coming to meetings and services and programs. And that's key to how libraries are successful these days. Libraries are moving from the idea of a transactional facility where you come and get something and leave, and becoming more of an experiential facility, a place that you enjoy being, spend time. In some places it's actually a safe space in some communities, and in others it can actually make a difference in a young child's life or an older person's life. That cross of demographics is very important. This is the scheme we'll be talking about today. This is the proposed plan that will be on the referendum in May, on May 21st.
Yep.
And we'd like to address components of it in detail, but we'll give you an overview on this slide and then focus in on key areas. Right now, as we showed on the earlier scheme, you come into the existing lobby at the entryway. We're in this meeting room now. And essentially, we're keeping many of these things. All the gray areas are areas where actually hardly any work is happening. The colored areas, the areas that have color coding, actually show areas that we will be doing renovations. And then the line that we define here that says addition to the left and existing building to the right, that's a small addition that's being added on the east side of the building.
Although, quick interruption, this sort of orange or rust-colored area is all the staff offices and book processing area, and very few changes are taking place to that. This renovation is not about improving staff space, with the exception that the circulation area will become more efficient. But, we're not getting new couches or anything back here. Just wanted to let you know. So.
One of the things you can see to that regard actually is the fact that we carved a meeting space, because they are in demand, out of what had formerly been staff space. And so while right now there's the very large meeting room, the medium-sized meeting room, now we actually have another one that's about 2/3 the size of that, because these are constantly being booked and reserved, and we'll talk about those statistics in a minute. It's important that these meeting spaces and this other space, which we're calling Starbooks, which is a meeting space, a lounge space, and also the used book sale in a perpetual sale. All of them are accessible to the lobby area, meaning they can be accessible when the library itself is closed. Therefore, meetings can be held off hours or don't rely on library supervision at all times, and it gives the most access possible to those particular functions. And we'll talk in detail about each of those spaces. There are a number of study rooms and other meeting spaces, and we'll talk about that in more detail. Local history has grown. The adult collection has grown primarily because where children's is now has moved into the addition. And you can see, obviously, the children's space has received a lot of attention as well. And then one of the keys, and Tim likes to talk about this, the teen center.
Right.
Mentioned.
So the teen center is that big rectangle right there. And libraries in general, since 1992, many libraries have developed teen spaces. And this gives our teens, our 13 to 19-year-olds, a place to call their own. The decor in there would be material that they're interested in, some comfortable furniture, lots of charging stations. Prior to school getting out at around 3 o'clock, it could certainly be just general study space for people in the library. But then it becomes a teen center. We do have a teen center in the existing library. You'll see a photo of it in another slide. But it is honestly just 3 pieces of furniture that were placed together in kind of a bare spot in the library and can accommodate 7 teens at once. 7 teens, not 17. So if you ask the average teenager in Gilberlin if our library had a teen center, they would probably tell you no, because it's not really recognizable as a teen center. And my point to you about this is, where is there in Gilberlin where our kids can go after school that's relatively safe, that's free, and that, what else is it about that space?
Well, that engages them and encourages them to interact in a
Healthy,
socially acceptable way. Right?
Healthy place to be and so forth. So this is a component we want to build into the library in order to serve our teen community better.
And while we're on the large plan, one other thing I wanted to mention is that it's easy here to note, these are the existing male and female restrooms, which are large gang toilet areas. We have added a family restroom off this lobby, so families who have multiple siblings that have to use the restroom, or people with developmental disabilities, whatever it may be, we've created more access for things like restroom access and thinking of the public. There are also 2 accessible restrooms now at this end of the building, in addition to a family restroom off the children's area and a family restroom off the children's program space. All of these are highly desirable. Picture a young mother with multiple children. One of them has to use the restroom. Currently, they would essentially have to go all the way to this end of the building. And by the time you've done that, you've sort of lost the opportunity you had to spend time in the children's center. So the dispersion of restrooms throughout the space to make it a more, again, safe and desirable area to spend time if you're studying, researching, or just spending the day. We can go through this slide fairly quickly, but just as a general summary, the existing building is about 27,000 square feet, the entire footprint. We're proposing that about 20,000 of that be renovated. In other words, many of the staff spaces or these rooms that are in gray don't need complete renovation. And then the addition is about 6,000 square feet. So it's about a 23% increase. It's significantly smaller than the proposal from 2012, about 7 to 8 years ago. It's also smaller in cost, which we'll get to in a little bit.
In terms of square footage, it's 6,359, and it was 12,000 square feet was the 2012 expansion.
Right. And you can see from this summary, we'll look at them space by space, but essentially the adult space, the teens, the children's area, all of these have significant increases. Program room and meeting and study rooms and local history, all of them have grown in this plan. Some of them because of the addition, so the children's room obviously grew because it moved from here into a larger addition, but some because of the fact that that moved meant that they could expand into other spaces. We've tried to prioritize the things that the community asked for. So there will be boards afterwards that you can look at in the back of the room that show the floor plan as well as some sketches of different areas. But why don't we take a walk through some of the key spaces, and Tim and I will talk to you about why they've been laid out or designed the way they have.
Great, so here we are at the front door again, and we turn right to come to the room we're sitting in. So these two meeting rooms are in high demand. I think I'll go ahead and mention here, we talked about 775 programs taking place last year with about 24,000 people in attendance. Those are what we call library programs. So they were planned by our librarians and carried out by our librarians and advertised by the library and so forth. There are another 190 community groups that used these two meeting rooms over the course of the year. And the way the bylaws are written or the policies, each group is allowed to use the meeting rooms up to twice a month. So some of those groups did use the meeting rooms 24 times. Others used them just once. A couple examples within the last week. Last night I was in the smaller meeting room speaking about the library renovation to the Guilderland Republican Party Committee. In a coming week I will be in the same room speaking to a group called Guilderland Citizens for Responsible Growth. So one, a very well-established long-term group, the Republican Committee, and the other, an ad hoc group that has recently sprung up to use this. Also using the small meeting room within the last week was the Norman Skill Strummers. This is a new group of ukulele enthusiasts. There are about 20 ukulele players who get together once a month to play the ukulele. We've had the Capital District Orchid Society, the Capital District Model T Club, flower arranging groups, you name it. One of my favorites is the Capital District Parakeet Society. So all kinds of groups are using these rooms for their own speakers and meetings and so forth. And we do have a number, but we don't have it in the presentation. But it's another 20,000 or so people using the meeting rooms in the course of a given year. So between 775 programs and 190 groups using the rooms, many of them multiple times, these two rooms are kind of rarely empty. So we're adding this third meeting room, which is only 100 square feet smaller than this room here. So that'll give us 3 meeting rooms. And then there's the aforementioned family restroom right there. And this whole section, including the Starbucks right here that you'll see later, is all theoretically available at times when the library is closed. So the Starbucks Cafe, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but one of our models is for a business to rent that from us. And if they rent it from us, they don't want to be limited to 9:30 in the morning to 9 at night, which are our hours. They probably want to start selling coffee before 9:30 in the morning, so they'd be able to do that the way that we've designed the renovation.
I do want to mention one change to this meeting room is the introduction of a door over in this wall, which would mean that the other new meeting room could be used as a green room for presentations and performances, and then people can come in over here at the front of the room rather than walking down the aisle, which is much more amenable to the types of functions that would happen in here.
This last weekend we had the Guilderland Chamber Choir and Guilderland Chamber Strings from the high school. And so this year they used the Norman Skill Room to dress in, which has a lot of windows. Other years they've used the administrative suite back in the back hallway, but they could certainly do it here. You know, the kids are wearing their black concert clothes, formal musicians. They want to look at a mirror before they get ready, that sort of thing. So this would also, when you're the performer and you have to enter, you've got, some nights we have more people for our presentation, but you have to enter through here and come up here and turn around and give your performance. It's a little different than popping through the door over here.
And you can see the original restrooms remain, and then we've added this new one. So this is a very functional space, particularly when we add the Starbucks. So you can imagine even after, say, yoga in the mornings, stopping by and getting coffee or tea in the cafe space as well. This is the nature of the spaces that we have now. They're very crowded. The used book sale is happening in the lobby as we speak. Sometimes the performances get so large that attendance that we actually have to go out into the space. And so what things can we do to improve these types of spaces? One of the things coming back I wanted to point out, this is that axis that Tim was talking about from here all the way through the building. If we look through that window on the far side of the lobby, down the spine of the building, that's one of the original architectural features. The new plan allows us to come into the lobby and then turn and enter the library proper along that axis, sort of the way the architecture guides you through the building. So when you come into the new space, the circulation desk is to your right. You have clear views through the adult collection to the children's and teen spaces, and then some feature areas, some seating spaces that have a comfort level and a tie to a certain architectural feature, whatever it may be, that sort of bring people together. So study spaces, seats, study tables, technology that is near the help desk, and in fact the help desk and circulation desk can cross-supervise each other.
A couple of feature areas you mentioned. Here's one and here's the other. So a good comparison for Capital Region residents is 6 or 7 or 8 years ago, the Colony Center Mall was pretty run down and a lot of vacant stores and so forth. And they put in some comfortable chairs and a couple of televisions. I'm not putting televisions into the library. A couple of little fireplaces. And now you find a lot of people kind of sitting there chilling out while someone else in their family is doing some shopping. So it's just upgrading the seating a little bit and making it an attractive place to stay. And the mall now is relatively healthier.
Right. Oh, and making a more desirable place to stay in the library is of benefit to the entire community then. So one of the things, because of this cross supervision as well, is a safety issue. That is, staff can see each other and support each other from different locations within the library, and patrons can easily and intuitively find where staff are. One of the largest expenses in any library is the staffing, and in fact, it's worth every single penny. But having said that, the entire plan that we've developed here with the help of the library staff, the administration, the board, throughout has been with the goal of being able to do this project without adding a single staff member. And I think there's a
I'll take
commitment to
off
that.
from there and just mention that with there was a referendum, as I'm sure you know, in 2012 to expand the library, and it failed dramatically. Now it was twice as expensive and twice as large in terms of square footage. But I personally believe, as do others on the board and on the committee, that one reason it failed is that the media and the public were asking, how many additional people are you going to need to run this library with 12,000 extra square feet in it? And the administration's answer at that time was, well, we don't really know. We're going to have to wait and see how the public uses the library, and we'll get back to you. That was criticized at the time in at least one letter to the editor as, so you're asking us to write a blank check for what it's going to take to staff this place in the future. As we were going along in the process, decided that it would be possible to do this, and so we made a commitment that we would add no additional staff as a result of this project. So that's one thing. The second thing I'm going to mention is that you can see this shelving here. Some of it is dark and some of it is lighter. So the lighter shelving is different from the darker shelving in 2 ways. One is that the lighter shelving is lower, so you can see over it. So you can see across the whole library. You're a family group. You've lost track of a kid. Where is he? Where is she? That'll be helpful. The other thing is that all of the lighter colored shelving is going to be movable shelving. So it'll be locked down 98, 99.9% of the time. But when we need to have an event that this room is too small to hold, which happens 2 or 3 times a year, we turn down events or we move them off to the school district. A great example is that we had former Mets pitcher and broadcaster Ron Garland here after he wrote a book, and we had 575 people. So we moved it over to Farnsworth Middle School. But we will be able to unlock these shelves and in a matter of a half an hour or an hour, push them up into these aisles here to get them out of the way, and we'll have a flexible event space that goes all the way like that. And that will be able to accommodate 300-400 people. For a speaker, you know, you get an example I could give you. I'm trying to think of a recent political book, but you know, let's say that former Governor Pataki writes a book. You know, there's heavy interest in coming to hear him speak about it. Let me just use a better example. Kirsten Gillibrand running for president. Let's say that she writes a book. We might get more than 100 people in here to listen to her speak. we'd like to be able to do that. So this space is modular. Now, another point I want to make about that is building new space is expensive per square foot. And that's one reason that last proposal in 2012 was twice as many square feet and twice as much money. So what this plan does is it says, we'll take the square footage we've already got built and use it differently, use it more flexibly. So that's the goal of that particular section. You get more space without building more space.
Exactly. And in fact, by taking the children's space from where it is and putting it into the addition, it allows us to expand this adult area, and the adult space increases by 27% without adding, for the adults, any new physical space as part of this. So
We'll need to add more chairs and tables.
there will be.
Yeah.
In fact, there's a summary of seating in a little bit. Right. So this is looking down that opening, that axis that we talked about. This is the spine. And as Tim mentioned, when all of these things are moved out, we actually have that open meeting space underneath the main architectural element.
Why don't you go back one for just a sec? It's not just this space, it's also all these stand-up shelves here,
Right.
which are the short lengths of shelves where mysteries and things like that are, boom, out of the way.
Where the collection expanded, right. So this is a sketch view looking from that entry out towards the children's room, the teen space. You can see through the feature window at the end here. This is all low stacks. New and popular as you come in. The circulation desk is to your right. And then it emphasizes the spine because the building is running along that length. This is another library we did just to show a similar feature. This has a wood grain ceiling and architectural light fixtures and a color scheme and texture to it that has a lot more warmth and a welcoming feature. We wouldn't be getting rid of the skylights, for example, but we could introduce more wood throughout the space to give it a feel that's more conducive to spending time there.
And I'm beating this to death, but all of this shelving and this kind of thing could just roll out of the way, and then envision that space as wide open with chairs set up in it, or envision this space with no shelving. And
Exactly.
Of course, at 45 minutes an hour, you get it out of the way and have your big event.
That's right. So as we look at some other ideas about that space, feature seating areas that we talked about can be key. Sometimes they have a fireplace, let's say, or a window, and those are the areas we're talking about here, both down at this end of the building on the east and on the south end of the building, and then even around the curved glass that looks out into the back plaza, the back reading area. We could do something that actually features that glass, create study areas or tables, something that emphasizes the natural light and the nice natural views out there. Anybody want to add to that? Okay. So one of the real superstars for the plan that came out of the discussions with the public was the amount of meeting space, both large and small. You can build a huge football stadium size meeting space, but that's only good for large groups. So we have the large meeting room and the existing medium. We talked about adding this one. We talked a little bit about Starbucks, but you'll see that there are also 4 study rooms that are set up for tutoring, quiet study, and quiet reading, or something we call a SOHO, a small office, home office. If you work from home, you can use the room in the library as a conference room. It's set up for distance learning and wired for that and so forth. The meeting room here is dividable. There's a folding partition, and so you could have up to 6 study rooms at key times. For example, SAT prep and ACT prep, or when AP exams are coming up.
Regents, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Local history moves from this space back into the space that had originally been designed, but basically doubles in size. There's a fair amount of ephemera and papers, and it would be nice to be able to show them as part of the story the library is telling about local history. Do you want to talk about Starbucks a little bit?
I'll do the Starbucks. So some people have, talked to me or talked to each other and said, why does a library need a cafe? Well, why does Barnes & Noble need a cafe? It's a very natural connection for people to have some refreshment, talk over some books and things with someone else over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. Now, this cafe, we hope, will not be run by the Portland Public Library. We hope that it'll be rented out using one of 3 models that we've developed so far. And we're not alone in this. There are other libraries, including nearby Saratoga and most of our local college libraries that have cafes in them. So you either rent it to a local business who operates it and pays the library rent and perhaps a cut of the items that are sold, Or another model that we've looked at is working with the same kinds of people, maybe the exact same people that run Puzzles Cafe in downtown Schenectady, which exists in part in order to provide jobs for people who are on the autism spectrum. There are a lot of young people that are aging out of the education system, have these syndromes, and may need a place to work. So that we would love it if somebody like that were to come in and run the cafe. And the third model that we have is to work with either the Gilberlin School District or the BOCES, Cap Region BOCES, to provide an entirely student, or even potentially Schenectady County Community College, to an entirely student-run operation where they do everything from plan the menu, order the supplies, staff it, make the schedule for the staff, do the bank deposits, etc., on a semester-to-semester basis in order to learn how to run a business as part of going to school. So those are all concepts with Starbooks. One thing I will mention is that this library is currently bringing in about $25,000 a year in revenue through used book sales. And these books are dropped off on our front porch or on our loading dock by people who can't bear to throw them away. And we are very, very grateful for that. We have a group of wonderful volunteers who organizes them, holds a monthly sale, and puts them onto the bookshelves out here in the lobby. Even a tiny uptick, if we were able to create this permanent space where you could put 10 or 12 bookcases in this cafe, Starbooks, probably would get us up to at least $40,000 a year, which would be 1% of our annual budget, which is around $4 million. So just an awesome concept to try to formalize the book sales a little bit. And if it were students, for example, running that, that would be another aspect of the business that they were learning.
Okay. When we look at the increase in meeting and study room space, we see that that's a 28% increase overall with the new meeting room, these study rooms, and so forth. One of the things that had been requested by the community and that we tried to adapt, not just in a single space, but throughout the library with different types of opportunities. You can see how crowded some of these spaces are now, literally tape on the floor to make sure there's enough room to move around.
In fact, all four of these photos are taken either in this room or right outside the door of this room.
Exactly.
And this is our biggest room,
And this is a regular occurrence,
Yeah.
the amount of attendance at things like
I
this.
mean, we started collecting photos to put this slideshow together about 10 days ago. This is not like, we've been saving this photo for 5 years to show you that we're busy. So.
As Tim mentioned earlier, these figures for the number of programs and the attendance at these programs in 2018 don't even include community groups. These are simply library-sponsored programs, and the community groups add probably another 20,000 people.
Yeah.
So it's heavily used by a lot of different members of the community. This is an example. This is a space we did in another library, but might be similar to the look or feel of the Starbooks Cafe. So high tables, simple cafe arrangement, rearrangeable seating technology, basically a casual area that is very popular in libraries for people to be.
Okay. Okay. So we're highlighting a few more spaces. We've already talked about the feature reading areas. This is the adult reference desk. These are the two family restrooms in that area of the building, and again, there are two more over here. This is the teen center that we talked about a little bit. So and this is a tech center, a bunch of computers. One of the nice things about the adult reference desk and the youth reference desk being right outside the teen center is we do want our teens to have their own place within the library, but we also would like to be able to keep an eye on them. So there's a front door, there's 3 windows here, 2 windows here, 2 windows here, and a window here. There hopefully will be nothing going on in the teen center that we would not want to occur in a public library. But they'll be well monitored. It takes an entire library staff sometimes to be the village.
Like it takes a village, right? One of the keys about the teen space is it is not in the children's space. That's a common design question about whether the young adult collection and/or young adults want to be considered as children. So it's actually outside of that, but because of these borrowed light windows, it does mean that a family with multiple kids can send their young teenager over here and be in this space and still be able to know what's going on or keep an eye on them. So we've tried to keep that in mind as we've gone along too. And you see that the teen space that's carved out now has grown by 103% in order to be this new teen center. This is an image of what it might look like coming into the children's area and into the teen center. This young man is walking into that space. This is one of those feature areas over there with study tables. This is an example of a teen space we've done in another library. Very flexible, mobile shelving, tables that can be moved, and even the seating can be rearranged into different formats at different times. This is the existing teen area as it is now. As Tim said, it's a few pieces of furniture set amongst the collection. This is another area we did in a different library. You'll notice things like docking charging stations for phones and iPads. Technology is heavily present. Their collection is in there. Tables that can be ganged together or pulled apart for study groups and gaming and all sorts of things. This is a very active teen group at this library. They do board game nights. They make movies, they have a green screen that they pull down, they do video editing and things like that as well. It's an extremely popular space. Anytime after 3 o'clock, it's generally pretty full.
So these are, the drawing down here is one of the feature seating areas. This is another library where Butler Rowland and Mace has built that's a place that just makes you want to sit down and read. This is our existing periodicals room. You can see that lovely window that we have that our original architect designed. And this is a shot of part of the main reading room. So these are comfortable chairs. We've had them since 1992. We've reupholstered them, of course. But they are essentially out in hallways. So when you're sitting there reading, people can be walking by you on 3 of your 4 sides. If you have your legs crossed, and every time someone goes by, you have to pull your legs in. So this wasn't designed to be this way. It's just what you do with space when you don't have enough space. Oh, let's put the chair here, So that's the kind of thing we're hoping to improve a little bit.
You can see the vast difference in experience between sitting in a chair that's very exposed like this, where people are always walking across the front of you or next to you or over your shoulder, versus a space where you have a niche and sort of your own room to be. So let's bring us to the addition then and focus on the Children's Center and what we're talking about there. It is not just the collection and study tables and technology and so forth, but also a program room that is almost the size of the meeting room we're in now, which is reflective of the use that it gets currently.
Let me jump in there. So the existing story hour room, which we'll see later, is fire capacity of 40, built in 1992. We moved all of our story times over into these 2 rooms within the last 2 years because, and I'll use the example of the most successful one, which is called 3 Little Birds Music and Movement Time. It took place this last Saturday and had an attendance of 162, or 4 times the capacity of the room that was built for that sort of thing back in 1992. That's an average attendance for 3 Little Birds. The high that we've ever recorded is 196. So we have moved all of them over here, which has a couple of drawbacks. One drawback is these are adult programming spaces. So while children's events are going on here, by definition, no other events, including the adult events that they were built to have happen, can go on here. There's also a $15,000 grand piano in this room, which when you put 162 kids in here, you might be sort of risking your grand piano. Lastly, and it's a little, it's a little arcane, but having kids events right here near the front door is arguably not as safe as having kids events back here or back here. So this area here will hold almost as many people as this area will here. Quite frankly, would we love to have a space for children which might be able to hold 250 kids? Maybe we need that in the future, but for now, we're planning for about those 200 as a ceiling for the events that we do have. So,
I'll mention also the drop-in activity area, and this is popular in many children's libraries. We know that the social aspect of being in a library can be very important. It's not just about the collection or the structured event like a story hour. And so there might be things like manipulatives and games and toys and things like that that even babies and toddlers can use. And young parents appreciate a great deal because it's a place to bring their kids, socialize with each other, as well as be near the collection, particularly if they have multiple kids. These are reading niches, or these are spaces that actually are like bay windows that look out into the grassy area that view through the window from before. And from a centralized children's help desk, we can see through and into all these spaces. We know these will be kept low, we have access to the technology, and we have access to the restrooms here.
You know, could you go back for just a second? Sure. So we have our youth reference desk here and our adult reference desk here. And as we mentioned earlier, both can keep an eye on our teens that are in the teen center. But the other thing that they can do is help one another or refer someone from here to here or vice versa with very little effort. So currently, our two reference desks, the youth reference desk is located right about here, and the adult reference desk is located right about here. And it's a real journey from one to the other, and if you send a patron from one to the other, they sometimes won't necessarily find their way.
You can't see one from the other.
Yeah, and you can't see one from the other. But here, you still can't see them because your backs will be to each other, but you'll be literally about, what, 15 feet apart? So it's nothing really compared to what it is now. So it's a good synergy. It's a good way to make people that are already working here able to work more efficiently.
So knowing that that was one of the priorities, you can see the program room has increased by 62%. The drop-in activity area didn't exist at all before, and now is a new space. And then the children's center, the balance of the children's library actually increases by 38%. And this is borne out by the statistics we see in circulation and attendance regarding the annual report. So this is a very heavily used children's library. Prioritizing it like this is consistent with some of the things we were seeing from the focus groups and the public interaction.
So this is our existing story hour room, which was built for a fire capacity of 40 people back in 1992. And here it is in action. And while this was a fun program, and we've had many, many programs in here, it gets a little tight, and it obviously limits the number of people that can come to a kid's activity.
This is an example of what it might look like in the new children's center. You come in through the door, that circulation desk is to your right. You can see through the glass windows into the program space. You can see through these windows into the drop-in activity area. And all the shelving is low so that not only can staff see, but even children can find parents or staff easily. Technology is available near the desk for assistance. And it's just an open, pleasant space. Here's an example of one we've done in another library that keeps it open and fluid and easy to use.
And here's one of the reading niches
Right.
where you could go into the bay window type thing. And this is another one.
Yes, there's a reading niche there. This one is done almost to resemble a tree fort, which we'll see in a minute, and even taking the columns and just making them playful or doing things with the ceiling to dress them up. These are some examples of other children's spaces. Note, again, the warmth, the colors, and an attempt to make them interesting spaces for children. Technology, where you have enough room to actually do work or play at a computer as opposed to cramming things very tight, which is what happens when there's not enough space. Here's an example of the wall between the children's center and the drop-in play area, so drop-in activity area. You can see through it. It's actually picked up a theme of some of the rural scenes of the town of Guilderland. This is an example of another one we've done. You can see the play tables, the structures. Essentially, a lot of younger children want to be active, and their parents want them, particularly in the winter months. This is a great opportunity to spend time in an active space, but also have access to the collection and the rest of the children's center.
I want to mention this briefly. We did 2 of these kinds of meetings last April when we were still developing the plan. And I got a letter from someone who had attended one of those afterwards, and he said, he or she, I can't remember, said, there is no room in a library for a play room. Kids don't come to a library to play, they come to a library to study and to learn and so forth. And, I'm not criticizing that person. That person probably came from an era where that was true in the library. You had to be very quiet in a library, you find what you needed. Your mother or your father might whisper to you while you read it. That is not today's library anymore. And there's lots of educational research that shows that if you combine music and a little bit of play with some manipulative type toys and books and reading, that you're going to end up with someone who's interested in all 3 of those subjects as opposed to someone who got the books and went home. So in reference to your statement earlier, it's not transactional, it's experiential.
Here's the example of a reading niche that's done up as a feature area. This is one we did in another library that happens to be on the Hudson River, and so a sloop and a river lighthouse was appropriate there. But again, in working with the children's library staff, one of the things that came out of those discussions were the idea of the outdoors and the playfulness of the town. Things like Taliesin Park and the rural farmlands were heavy influencers.
So this is our the outdoor area right outside of our Starbucks Cafe Lounge. So you see this is the door into Starbucks or out of Starbucks onto the plaza. These seating walls look like fun places to sit and drink a cup of coffee, visit with somebody. Tables for reading and studying. Wi-Fi, by the way, just so you know, as of today, our Wi-Fi would work in this space right outside of the building. We have our Wi-Fi on 23 hours and 45 minutes a day. So we turn it off right around 9 o'clock in order to help people realize that they need to get out of the building because we're closing. And then about 9:05 we turn it back on. And what you see in more rural places than Gilderland is you see cars parked outside the library in the middle of the night, or at least a 10 to 12 time frame, because kids have assignments that need to be done and they don't have Wi-Fi at home. About a third of New Yorkers do not have Wi-Fi at home. So Wi-Fi would work in this area. Now this area is this grassy area over here, and some of it you can't see in the photo. And we do have a fireman, I believe, or at least he was here earlier, you can't block the fire lane and build a seating area there. So this starts right about here and goes over this way. And one of our fundraising ideas for the future of the library is to sell the paver type bricks that would go. Paul, as an architect, likes them to be vertical rather than on the ground, because the ones on the ground get full of muck and need to be cleaned a lot. So we would sell bricks to people so they could put a saying or their family name on there to help us raise money to build this. One thing you could do in this space, you could either have outdoor acoustic concerts where somebody played an acoustic guitar, or with any luck you'd have young people bringing their guitar and just setting up like they do sometimes in pedestrian malls downtown and playing a little bit without having been contracted to do so. So kind of a space, again, a space, my wife and I love to eat outdoors. We love to go to a restaurant and eat in an outdoor seating area. There are not very many of those in Gilderland. So this is a place when the weather's good to sit outside and commune with your neighbors.
We know there are issues throughout the existing parking lot. Tim mentioned the fire access lane, but for example, if you are mobility challenged and you park in a handicap spot, you currently have to go through the paved asphalt area, which is the driving lane, to get to the building. And we want to look at how we can improve that safety issue. The book drop is another example that right now creates a bottleneck at the two curb cuts there, and in fact it's difficult for staff to get to in bad weather because of its remoteness. So what we're actually looking at are a series of improvements to the overall site as well. So I'll start from Western Ave, which you all recognize, if any of you drove here, I'm assuming most of you did, is dangerous given the speed and the volume of traffic on Western Avenue. The curb cut into Mercy Care Lane can be sometimes treacherous, and in fact, one of the things that the library and the town have discussed many times, and to the credit of the town they have helped address, is the connection to Winding Brook Drive, so that leaving the library you don't have to go out and make a left onto Western. You can leave the library, go out to Winding Brook, come up to the traffic light on Western, and make your turn there in a much more safe manner.
Not just safe, but usually faster. I live in that direction.
Yes.
Usually faster.
So we'll come back to that in a second, but I wanted to point out some other features, and one is, as we come in from Mercy Care, we've made this one way, put the book drops over here so that any bottleneck is happening in this area rather than at the entrance or exit, preventing people from leaving the library.
Jumping in here, Paul, he said book drops, so there would be one at SUV pickup height and one at sedan height, so that you didn't have to crawl halfway out of your car to return your books.
You can see that we've introduced a peninsula that bisects the main parking lot, and this has a walkway, some trees and benches. But what this means is that people who park in the handicap spots located here now can actually exit their vehicle, come up onto a sidewalk, and only have to cross at a crosswalk this very narrow lane. The lane is narrow to slow traffic, but also to minimize the vulnerability of people crossing there. These spots would likely be family spots or quick browse spots so that people can get in and out of the building quickly. Overall, we go from 136 existing spaces to 173 spaces for the library because the upper land, which is, there's a retaining wall here now, is converted into an overflow and staff parking spaces.
Well, I'm just going to jump in and say that, you know, I've referenced a couple times in the presentation the question people will ask sometimes, why do we need a library at all in the age of Google? And one of my answers, I have like a one-sentence answer that I will give to people in certain situations, and it is, when you drive up and down Western Avenue for the next month, you look at my parking lot, and more often than not, you will find that it's full. So we need libraries because our library users are telling us we need libraries.
So while we were looking at this was one of the primary issues that we wanted to address, was safety for access onto and off of Western Avenue. But we also looked at a number of other bullet points throughout the project. One of them is fire protection. If we were building this building today, we would have had to provide a fire protection sprinkler system. It wasn't required in 1992, but we're introducing that as part of the safety for the overall building. The book drop location we just discussed, and accessible parking, making them more usable. The main entry surface right outside the main doors is currently a set of pavers, but they have some ellipse, they've moved a bit. So we would use a surface that's more mobility friendly, if you will, for people with canes or the potential to trip.
Wheelchairs, so.
Exactly. The restroom locations, although a convenience issue, is also a safety issue. If you have to leave your space, you pick up your laptop, your backpack, and all the things you had to go use a restroom, or are they nearby and you can use them more easily? Or do you take all your children? Are you safe leaving one someplace? You want to make sure that you can take everybody into a family restroom. Staff sight lines mean that they can provide service better, but also they can supervise what's happening in the spaces. And emergency egress. The New York State Building Code requires that we have a certain number of exits in the event of a fire. But we've actually created more exits from the building because of other types of events that might be necessitate a quick evacuation. And in fact, that's above and beyond what the code requires. They are alarmed doors, so children or even patrons can't just walk out a door, but they give us more flexibility in dealing with emergencies when necessary. And lastly, I'd throw in lighting improvements. We have LED lights in many parts of the building now for better efficiency, but we want to talk about a better quality of light in many of the spaces as well. It's not just the number of foot candles for reading, but do we have lights that don't put glare on computer screens or laptops, for example? Are we highlighting artwork appropriately and evenly? These are improvements that will also improve safety both in the building and on the site. So coming back to the community priorities, we think we've addressed all of these in multiple ways, from safety and accessibility to the cafe bookstore, which we're calling the Starbucks idea, traditional and non-traditional programs, reading niches and comfortable reading areas, and of course a focus on the children's and young people's spaces. But it also gave us an opportunity to look at what the future is potential for materials.
Right. So you'll see the increased percentages. So there will be room for almost 9% more children's material, 38% more teen material, 11% more adult material, and seating overall up by 57%. So it's interesting to look at these three materials. The results of our survey were very consistent with the results of surveys nationwide. People say that they want more materials in the library. And they do, but they also demonstrate with their attendance at the library that they want more space and more events. So a library today has to provide both rather than providing simply the one that many of us grew up with. I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up in that library I described to you, but that's not the library anymore.
Yeah, good point.
So I'll cover the money if we can. The bottom line of the project, I mean, we could get into, and I will get into briefly, that 2.3 million is for the new construction, and the rest is all for updating the existing building and doing what are called soft costs, so environmental testing and fees and construction management. But the entire project is $8.3 million. However, the library has for the last 5 years been setting aside money in a capital reserve fund. So we are able to subtract 1.4 million from that for a total that we are asking people to bond on May 21st of 6.953 million. Now our 2012 was 12.9 million. And as Paul is fond of saying, we didn't pick a number and say, how can we get to that number? We surveyed the public and said, what do you want? What do you need? What can you live with? What can you live without? And then we sifted through all that and came up with a project that would end up costing 6.95 million. Assemblymember Fahey has earmarked $250,000, $250,000 for us. We can't take it against this amount because through the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, it takes you about 3 years to get through their review process. And we're looking at borrowing this money next fall rather than 3 years from now. So in order to build, we need this money, but this money will come in on the back end and help a little bit with it. We also have a fundraising campaign that we're about to launch where we intend to try to sell naming rights to local businesses for different sections of the library. And if so, we will hopefully be able to raise a significant sum. Also, there's an annual construction grant fund through New York State. So I'm going to give you an example here. Now, we've already redone our entire HVAC system over the last 5 years, and it cost us about $700,000. And we got about half of that back by getting grants on a year-to-year basis because we split the project up into little parts. But you cannot bank on a grant. You don't know that you're going to get it until you get it. Okay, so we intend to apply for grants to defray some of this at the end. So let's use a $700,000 example. Gilderland is a school district where our poverty level limits us to a 50% reimbursement from the state on things that we apply for construction grant funds for. And then we're in competition with the other 29 libraries in Albany and Rensselaer counties. So let's say I'm doing a $700,000 project. $350,000 is the most the state will ever give me back on it. Typically what happens in my 5 years experience where we've gotten 3 of these construction grants in the 5 years is that you start by getting about 15 to 25% of what you've asked for. And then what happens is as the year goes along, some other libraries end up dropping out. They put a construction grant proposal before their voters. But what they find is state ed requires you, we're a school district library, but there are also municipal libraries, free libraries like they have in Altamont, and special legislative district libraries. So as one of those 4 kinds of libraries, we're subject to state ed. They require us to have all the cash on hand before we can apply for the grant. So we're doing a $700,000 project, we have to have $700,000 on hand. That's why we have this money here, because we're planning to use it to leverage construction grants as we go along. So hopefully this 1.4 million will turn into another 800,000 or so through the course of the 3 years of grant process. But we don't know that yet, so we haven't put a dollar figure there. Now there's other, NYSERDA sometimes pays you back. National Grid sometimes pays you back. Sometimes Senator Amador or Assemblymember Fahey has access to what's called bullet aid articles in the paper the last couple of days that say that may be gone for good. If it's gone for good, it was nice knowing it. It has helped this library quite a bit over the last 5 years. The bottom line is we're asking to borrow 6.953. In terms of paying it back, it depends on whether we pay it back over 15, 20, or 25 years. But it's most likely that the school district would choose to borrow it over a 20-year period. which would mean that for every $100,000 of assessed value that you've got, you'd be paying $12.30 a year for the addition to the library. So if you have a $300,000 house, you're going to be paying $36.90 a year for this project if you vote for it, and enough of your neighbors do. Or when you think about it and do some division, about a little bit less than $1 a week in many cases. We think that the project is definitely worth that. We are trying to speak here to the average taxpayer of Guilderland. We realize there are some people with a $50,000 home. It's going to cost them less, but it might hurt them in their pocketbook more because they may not have as much net worth as the guy with a $300,000 home. But we've also got some people with $900,000 homes, and they may be in the room as well. It's going to cost them a little bit more than that's the way that a progressive tax works. But basically, it's $12. We believe it will be $12.30 per 100,000 of assessed value. Why can we not know? Because the school district isn't borrowing the money for another year. They don't need to borrow it now, so why borrow it now and begin paying it back right away? They're borrowing a year from now. So we think it's most likely that it'll be the $12.30. And of course, we've paid a bond counsel firm to study that for us, so they know what they're predicting, what interest rates are going to be, that sort of thing. We think it's $12.30.
Just for reference too, the last time that the library bonded to the community or had the community pay back a bond was actually in 1992 when this building was built.
Yeah.
So this is a once in a quarter century, once in a generation type ask to provide the types of services and the type of library that the community wants.
Yep, or that we hope the community wants. This is a FAQ sheet, frequently asked questions, that has some of that same information in it. And there are copies of this on a table that's right outside the door to the right, so we encourage you to take copies if you haven't already. This is an evolving document, not because the information necessarily is changing, but because we are in a situation here at the library where the person who helps us publicize things, our public information officer, retired in December, I believe. So we've just hired a new person. She's in the room with us, Luann. But not only is she learning her job, but she's learning her job at a time when there are 5 weeks left between now and the referendum. So, and the other reason this is an evolving document is because when we lost the referendum in 2012, we were roundly criticized for having spent $40,000 or $50,000 hiring a consulting firm to help us convince the voters to vote for it. And people said, you shouldn't spend that $50,000, you should just put it into the project. And we listened to them and we said, we're not going to spend that $50,000 this time. So instead we're doing it in-house, and as such, we are not making it up as we go along, but we're just not quite finished. But today was the day we were having the presentation. So we have Luann, who's right here, and we also have Laura Graffio of Guilderland and Veronique Fortin. Laura and Veronique both work at the library, or actually Laura worked at the library until 2 days ago. She's a recent graduate of Siena College with a degree in communications. And so we said, rather than that $50,000 consultant, let's take some of the talent that's right on our own staff and produce materials. Our goal not being to convince you to vote for it, but just to tell you what it is that we're trying to do. It's your job to decide how you vote.
Which is also the reason we propose to do meetings like this. Hopefully, we have a few more coming up and the attendance will be up. We hope this is a project that interests people enough to find out all the facts about it. So the information that's going out there is continually being updated, so we are as up to speed as possible.
So tonight's presentation will be on our website, and there's another presentation on May 2nd at 6:30, substantially the same as this one. So if you enjoyed this one and you have friends and neighbors who are not convinced or would like to learn more about it, send them our way. Quite honestly, I'm available anytime. If somebody wants to just call and talk, I'll sit down and talk with somebody and tell them about this sort of thing. You vote at your elementary school. It's from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. If you go to the school district website, there's a little section called Budgets and Voting, and it tells you how to get an absentee ballot if you feel like you need one, who's eligible to vote, how to register to vote, and which of the 5 elementary schools is your polling place. So that should answer all your questions. Luann, did we already put a link to that page on our website? Okay, we will shortly. So anyway, that's everything you might have wanted to know. Are there any questions for us? Joe?
Tim, the last time you referred back to 2012, the vote that was not passed.
Yeah.
We're in a better position now because in 2012, if I recall, we did have one gadfly that was very, very, very vocal
Yes.
and successful from his point of view.
Right.
And I don't think we're going to see that now.
Well, I hope you're right. Now, what we have done about that gentleman, who certainly was simply just expressing his perspective and so forth, is that we knew that he would likely be a critic of our project, so we invited him to join the committee that has put this project together. So he was our design steering committee. And we quite frankly told him, you know, we're not in love with what you did last time around, but we believe that it's appropriate to have the perspective of somebody would like to limit the cost of the overall project. So if he would join us in the design process and help us to create a project that might be more affordable for the community, please join us, and he was happy to do so. He was here at a meeting last night. So he's been part of our group. He may still decide that he doesn't favor the project, but he can't say that he doesn't know all about it, which was one of his criticisms last time. You know, some of this process is being done in the dark. Okay, so why don't you join our committee? You know? Anyway, he has been a member of our committee. Yeah, it's there is an element in every community, I'm sure, that is just against any increase in taxes. And we believe what we've presented to you today is worth the money, or we wouldn't present it to you. So that's, we differ with that gentleman, but, or at least we differ with where he was in 2012. So hopefully, right, hopefully he'll take it easy on us. So another thing we're not doing that we did last time, you know, we didn't pay the consultant $50,000. We also are not doing 4 slip mailers that will come into your mailbox every 10 days or so. If we do a mailing, it'll be one mailing. And we haven't even decided if we will do a mailing yet. We might just do an emailing. We have about, I want to say about 16,000 email addresses in Gilbert out of the 36,000 people that live here. And what makes the email addresses attractive is that there are people who have given their email address to the library. So they already have some sort of interest in the library. Whereas those who haven't given their email addresses to us may not have an interest in the library. So we haven't decided quite where we'll go there, but we're also not going to do, we had a phone bank in 2012 where we tried to call everybody. And my view on that is that nobody wants their phone to ring at home at dinner time. A lot of people don't answer it. And if they do answer it, they often resent the intrusion. So we're not going to do that one either. So anyway, I hope that helps. Other questions from anyone? Yes.
So I'm all about the library, so I think it looks really great and everything.
Thank you.
We're all about that. The one question I did have in regards to the whole safety thing and opening up the back turnaround, which is great, is are they ever thinking about making Mercy Lane, or whatever it's called, like a no left turn?
Right.
Or at
Okay.
least
Could we pull up
widening it so that people could go to the right, people could go to the left?
Yep. So there are some thoughts there, and I have the pleasure of meeting with Supervisor Barber this week on Thursday, where that's one of the things that we'll talk about. So the background to what you're saying is that from Western Avenue here back to the end of Our Lady of Mercy is currently a private road owned by St. Peter's. From the end of Our Lady of Mercy over to the YMCA, it's now a town road, which is a recent development. So it's a town road, here's the why. It's a town road from here to here, okay? And then a private road from here to here. However, my understanding, and I haven't talked to Peter about this for a couple of months, but will on Thursday, is that St. Peter's is giving this to the town of Gilbert, and it's going to become a town road. So one idea that I know that Peter has is that we've petitioned the DOT forever to try to get a stoplight here, and frankly, unless there's some major loss of life there, the DOT doesn't have what they call warrants, which means evidence that it's a dangerous place that needs a traffic light. So they've said no to a traffic light. However, there are two possibilities. One is to do right here a right turn lane, so that once one person is sitting here waiting to go left or west, all the other people who want to go right can just go right past that person while they wait. So that'll cut down on the traffic jams that are about that long that you see. The other idea that was proposed to me during the 4 o'clock session today is to make this street one way going this way, so that it would be illegal to come out of the parking lot and turn right here and try to leave. So if this was one way going this way, it would take a little getting used to. But I will ask Peter about it on Thursday and see what his thoughts about that are. Yes?
You have no idea what percentage of turns are, do you?
What percentage the turns are? No, and I also have been wondering if I could somehow figure out what percentage of people in Gilderland live east of this point and west of this point.
Or can you just not make a no left turn?
You could just put up a no left turn, but then once somebody gets there, it could get a little more dangerous if they then try to come over to the right to go right, or try to back up or something like that. But that does seem like a middle ground. Instead of just going one way, just put up a no left turn. As you may have noticed, there's a sign right here that says to go west on 20, go this way. It's very counterintuitive. But if we could also add, a little arrow with a red circle with a line across it, so I can ask him about that. It might just be a stronger inhibition. Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, it just,
Okay.
when you go to leave, I turn right.
Okay.
So yes, either you're sitting there for a while, or you've got, people that are turning left. And I do know that there has been accidents.
Yeah.
Back on the library, I don't know. She's
Yeah.
still here, she was very badly injured.
Yeah. Not injured enough for DOT, but yes.
And stuff.
She was
So,
very injured.
It's just always been a concern.
I tell you what I do, and I live over that way, but quite often I'm headed toward the middle school or Price Chopper or something like that. So when I'm sitting right here, now first of all, I'm almost always in the staff lot, so which is here. But if I happen to be in this parking lot and I'm sitting right here, I'll just glance up that way. And if the person sitting there has a turn signal on, and it's that they're going left and I'm going right, I just end up going this way anyway, and I go right from here. And the town was good enough when they took over this segment that they trimmed back the vegetation right about here pretty substantially. Where it's still a little bit difficult is if you want to go straight across, or in the winter when there are piles of snow right about here, you don't necessarily know if someone's coming this way when you're sitting at this particular corner. At night it's safer than during the day because you see headlights. But there's still a relatively dangerous little intersection there, but nowhere near what that is, which even when you're leaving here tonight, if you're going left, it'll be hard. The timing of the lights. The other thing we asked DOT is, could you change the timing of the lights to create bigger gaps? And they were unwilling to do that as well. So, it's not just DOT is bad. Like there's science to roads, and whatever we're complaining about, they're not finding when they study that intersection. So, they did put a very tiny turn lane in on Western. So if you take a left out of here to go this way, there is a 1 car length middle ground. They restriped right there. I tried it once, and I found it pretty terrifying. To sit there with cars whizzing by me about 3 or 4 inches on both sides of my car. You get one of the vehicles with a great big, side mirror on it, and I think it's all over. So I don't really recommend using that little left turn lane that they made there, but it was a nice concession that I think Senator Amador and Assemblymember Fahey both called the DOT within the same 10-day period at our request. They are, by the way, both of them very responsive to the library and very interested in this project. And both are big supporters of the project. And will be helping us get some information out of it. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for coming, and I'll hang around a little bit if you have any questions you want to ask on the way out. Thank you, Barry and Laura, for coming, and to our employees as well. And Superintendent Biles, thanks for dropping in. So, all right.
Tim,
Joe?
Tim, what about that hill next to us with the piece of equipment? Is